All right, welcome back to the Sci Fi Case project. This is part 5 in the tutorial series. So hopefully we'll get to this point today, and you can see here I've kind of detailed out one section of this model, and it's separated out from the end here. And I mirrored it across so you can see each piece, what's going on here. In fact, let me turn on wireframe unshaded just to show you. And I have sort of the steps. So on this step here, I kind of broken up the pieces. This one I did some modification from the original. So you can see here what happened is I need to extend out this section in order to break it up and give enough room for this piece to be on its own. So just modifying it as I went along. And this is all in reference to my artwork here for that I took offline, my references. And it's this piece here. Basically you can see it's kind of got like this little sort of area, and then it goes across here, and then another area would be attached, and that's kind of the thing I was kind of looking for. I changed the circle position. I kind of moved it over here. There's an open circle here on the end. I just thought it was more interesting where it's at now, and you know, again, it's just a reference. It's not absolutely going to be precise. And then the other parts will be more like this on the front face, something similar right here. And so, yeah, we'll see how things go. But basically, that's where we're at. So we're going to go ahead and follow these steps here. That's kind of why I separate him out here into 3 or duplicate him. So we'll kind of work on this guy and kind of see what we can do. So the first step is to essentially add an edge loop right in here, and then kind of give it some more distance in between. So I'm going to use my insert edge loop tool. Just double click on that. Make sure it's set to relative distance from edge. And then just click right here, and that creates the edge loop. And click out with the white arrow, and then I can hit the R key, which is the scale tool, and I can scale it in the Z direction to make it kind of flat and straight, and that's sort of the idea there. And then I'm going to move it out a little bit like that, just to separate it. Now the tricky part is like how to select all this stuff here on the side to move it over, and so the best way to do that is through these ortho views here. So any of these views that you like, you can do that and sort of grab. This is the wrong view. Actually, I want to be in the top view here. This would be the easiest way to do it. So you can see my red line there is still selected. So what I'm going to do is right click and go into face mode and simply drag across a selection like that. And I believe I got most of them. Maybe I didn't get all the faces, but let's see here. So we got them all along there, the edge line, and I missed just a couple here. So this is very easy. I can just hold Shift key and click here to accept all those faces there. Now I just want to essentially move them out a little bit. I kind of want to have equal distance on each side here, approximately, for the thickness of this section here. Once I have that, that looks pretty good. Then what I want to do is sort of deselect these faces along here so that I can give me a little bit thickness here. So the way I'm going to do that is hold the control key and click here, and then I'm going to roll down and you know, basically just deselect these guys as I go along. And you can do it also with the Shift key, you know, to deselect. Either one will work. But basically I just want to deselect these two, and that should do it. And it looks like there's a face on the back. I just realized there's extra faces. I'm going to end up deleting those, so I'm going to ignore them for just a sec here. And I'm just going to pull that out. Actually, I can't ignore it because it is selected. So let me deselect that one. Now I can pull it out. There we go. And so that's the extra thickness here that I got here on this option. So I kind of want to bring out just a little bit more, something like that will be good. Now I can go to face mode and just select these faces. And again, these are interior faces. I wouldn't need these, so I'm just going to delete those. And now we've sort of completed step 1, which is this one. Now we're going to go ahead and break up these different parts. And so that requires you to select faces and then do a couple of steps. I have the sort of hotkey set up here in my custom shelf. So it's under, let's see, under edit mesh is the extract. It should be in here. Or is it mesh tools? Let's see. I always forget where these are at. Here's combine and separate. So that's the second part. The first part is the extract, which is, let's see, here it is. So it's in our edit mesh extract. There it is right there. And that will that'll start the process. Then you have to basically separate the geometry, because it'll be extracted mesh, but it won't be part of the same mesh once you separate them. So the first one I'm going to select is this section here. So I'm just going to go into face mode and basically select these faces here. So I'm just going to hold shift and go through and select the faces I want to extract, and it's these here and that one, and it is not these here. I just was thinking about it. It's not these. So it's just this section here, because this will be a whole unit by itself and this will be a whole unit. So again, I'm just going to click on the extract hotkey in the shelf here, and you can see what it did. It created an edge line around the whole thing. So if I hit number 3 here, you'll just kind of see it looks like it's still kind of connected, but it has this extra edge around there. With that still selected, I can click on separate. Now you can see if I right click, go to object mode and select that mesh and hit number 3, it's only going to affect that one piece because that's a separate piece of geometry. So basically that's how you do it. So the next one I would do is down here, go to face mode. I'm going to select basically all these faces here. And remember, you can click on one with the shift key and then go to the end line that you want and double click, and that will basically select all those faces in between. Nice little trick. So this is another one that I want to kind of separate out. So again, I'm just going to click on the extract and then the separate. So that one's done. And then this one here, go to face mode, click on this one, and oh, I just realized I'm going to undo that because I forgot the bottom faces that I need to select. So I have those selected. So this is actually really important, is to make sure you have these faces selected too, since this is the lower end here. And now click extract and then separate. Now I got that whole section separated out. On this guy, go to face mode, select this face, and then again I'm going to hold the shift key and then just double click here to the end point where I want and do the same thing. So extract and then separate. Now we have each section that's separate. So we got this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece, which is pretty cool. And if you look here on this one, basically it's exactly the same as this step. So the next step is to start to add some detail to this piece, and that's what I did here. And I added this circle here. And the first thing I did was, if you look at it, is on this bevel part, I kind of pulled these out. And so it's this line here. I'm gonna go into edge mode here, click on this edge, and I'm just gonna double click. So I've kind of selected that whole edge line there. And basically I just use a scale tool, which has a hotkey of R, and just drag it out like this to get kind of a roundness to it. And actually, let me undo that. I forgot there was one step I did first before I did that, which is I need to finish off my geometry on the top here. So I'll show you how you can do that. Basically using the multi-cut tool, which is this guy right here. Multi-cut tool, I believe, is under mesh tools. Here it is here, multi-cut. It's also in the tools over here, the modeling toolkit, which is the multi-cut here. So whichever one you prefer to use, just click on it. And the way it works, basically click on a point, and then you can come to another end line and click. And I'm going to hold Control and Shift, and that will kind of snap it to a 90-degree angle. And so basically that's what I'm doing there. So click, and then you notice if I click again, it creates a triangle. So I'm going to undo that for a sec, and I'm going to right click. That ends the action. So again, left click with the mouse, hold Control Shift click, and then right click to end that action. So again, I'm going to click here, Control Shift, left click, and then right click to end that. And the last one here has 5 sections, so we need to add another line here. So I was thinking it'd be good to add one across this way. So I click here, and then hold Control and Shift and click here, and then basically just kind of Control Shift and click and click and click until you get to the end there, and then right click, and that ends it right there. So now that should be, if we look at it, should be the same kind of geometry setup we have here. The only difference is there's a section here. If I hit number 1, you can see there's a triangle here, and it looks a little different, and you're like, what's going on there? I'll explain in a sec, but I'm gonna when I add a bevel line here, you have to reroute it so it curves around here. So the next thing I do, I think, is we're gonna add maybe some extra loops. Like we could add another edge loop like right through here. So again, I'm gonna use that multi-cut tool to do this. I'm gonna hold Control, and if you go Control and Shift, it'll kind of snap to a point, which is kind of nice. And that's sort of a good marker there. And let's see, I think that one, I might actually, I'm gonna double click on it and hit W. I'm gonna move it over just a tad, because I want this to be kind of a square for the circle. So this is where my opening will be for the circle that is right here, you can see. So let's do that first before we pull out the edge on the side here. Or actually, we could do the edge first and then do it too. I think that's the way I did it the first time. So again, I'm going to double click on this edge and I will scale it out. Yeah, like that. That's okay. And so you can see it pulls it out a little bit. And so what I have to do here is I want this to be a straight line. I don't want it to bend out. So I don't have to move the whole thing. I'm just going to grab this individual point. So I'm going to go right click, go to vertex mode, and select this vertex and grab the move tool. And essentially what I want to do is line up with this vert here. And so I can move it and kind of eyeball it. But once you start to move it, here's a cool trick. If you hold the V key and click on it, it's snapped to point. You can see when I hold V, up here in the top, this magnet pops on, and that's the snap to point, and it will literally snap to that direction. It's a great little hotkey to remember. So again, select it. The trick is to move it first to get it going, then hold V and then snap with the middle mouse button down. So I'm holding the middle mouse button to snap to that point. And so it takes a little bit of practice to kind of get that idea, but once you get it, it's very, very cool. So yeah, that looks pretty good. That's kind of what I want the setup. Now, let's get that interior. Actually, let's add some edges first, and then we'll get that face. So I'm going to double click on the Insert Edge Loop tool, and I'm going to add an edge loop right here because I want a nice sharpness right along here. And then I'm going to add one here and here, because otherwise, with smoothing, it won't hold this form. If I didn't have those edge loops, it would be kind of really weak. And you can see the difference. I'll kind of come over here to this guy and just hit number 3 on it. You can see how rounded it gets here on this guy. So this is one of the things we have to deal with, is getting these nice supporting edge loops. So I'm going to add some more, and I can use the multi-cut tool to do the same thing. So I'll switch to that and just hold Control, and I'll add one. Let's see, one here, and then maybe one here. So that's a couple of nice little edge loops. And then I want to add one right here, but see how it redirects? It goes down to a different direction. So that's a little problematic. So what's happening there is it ends here, and then it goes, oh, this is a triangular shaped quad, so I don't know how to deal with it. And so what you can do is you can start from here, and then basically click, and then N, and then you can hold the Control here and basically connect. So now I can connect here and then here. And again, each time, and if you mess up like I did on that one, you can just hit Control Z. Just make sure you have the point selected. I had the line selected. Then right click, and now I have the line. So I want this line to continue around here and go through. And so right now it's just not matching up. It's creating a weird section here. So if you look here, what happens is it connects and then goes across all the way through. So let's go ahead and basically do that. So here, if I connect here to here, there's nothing to hold it. So that's why I need that diagonal line across here. So I'm going to click here and then right click. Now this point can end right here. So I'm going to end it right there. Whoop, undo that. Zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to end it right there. There we go. And then end it right here, and then right here, and then right click. And so now you can see I've kind of made that line go all the way around. And what's really important about that is edge flow. If you don't have proper edge flow, lots of weird things can happen. And so now when I hit 3, it's got a nice firm sort of grip along there as it goes all the way around. So last thing is now we can start to work on is the circle here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Control and Shift. And this is really nice. If you hold, it shows these percentages, and I want to be exactly 50% in. Click this way, and then same with this direction, 50% in. And the reason why is I want to create a circle in here. And so if I right click, go to Faces, and select these 4 faces here, and do an extrude by hitting Control E, I can click on the face cube here, and then grab the interior face here, and drag in, and essentially what I've done is I've created a little inset, but right now it's kind of square. If I hit number 3, you can see it's kind of square. So what you can do with this selected is you can hold the Shift key and right click, and you get extra options in your mouse. I'm holding Shift and right click, and I'm going down to Circularize Components, which is somewhere up there in the command line. I forget where it's at, but it's somewhere up here in this area. But it's just an easy hotkey. Remember, hold Shift and then right click at the same time. And now I have this cool Circularize. And if it's not exactly lined up, I can hit E for rotation and kind of rotate around, or I can scale it a little bit if I want to make it a little bit smaller, which is really nice here. And basically just modify it like that. So now that will be a perfect circle. And now I'm going to hit Control E to extrude, and I'm going to grab this blue arrow and just drag in a tiny bit, because what I'm doing essentially is creating my edge loop. So I'm just going to drag it in just about to there, and then I'm going to hit Control E again and drag it in even further, and then Control E one more time and drag in just a smidge more. So what that has done is essentially add those edge loops without any extra work on my part. I'm not switching the Insert Edge Loop tool. And then lastly, I kind of want this flat surface to have an extra edge loop around it. So if I hit Control E or G again, G is a nice hotkey also. G repeats the last action that you've done. So you hit G one more time, it does another extrude. And I'm going to click first on this blue cube and then click on the center cube and drag to the left. And that scales it in and creates a loop around the whole circle. So now when I hit number 3, you can see I got a nice circle inset there, which is pretty cool. So basically, we have accomplished everything that we need essentially from that one to that one. The only thing that's different is right now it doesn't have any thickness to this. So if you look at it, it's just not very thick at all. If we isolate it, you can see it's just a thin piece. So what I like to do is do an extrude with this whole thing selected. So what I can do is right click, go to face mode, and you can of course drag over everything, or you can just double click and that selects all faces on a face, and just hit Control E to extrude. And you can pull up or down with the extrusion. On this one, I'm actually going to want to pull down because I want to create thickness edges to basically show a separation line. So what this will do is it'll kind of give me a nice separation line of the edges as we go down on here. So by doing that, that's what will happen. Now you'll see that it has turned black, and we can correct that in just a sec here. Right click, go to object mode. You have to do what's called inverse the normals. And the only way you're seeing this right now, the black, is if you have under shading, two-sided shading turned off. So where is it here? Sorry, no, lighting. Two-sided shading turned on. So usually it's set on. So if you turn this off, you'll see if your normals are inverted, and that's what's essentially happened here. It's like flipped inside out. So where you find how to correct this with polygon meshes is under mesh display, and right here is reverse. And once that does, it basically reverses the normals on that. So now it looks correct all the way through. So the only thing that I did differently between these two is I cleaned up the mesh a tiny bit. Let me isolate this guy. Is I brought these guys down a little bit further, and I, basically evened them out a little bit. And if we go, and then I mirrored it across. And so the mirroring, I'll do another step. But you can see here, I have some extra faces on the end here. So again, I'm going to right click, go to face mode, delete these faces, which are unnecessary. The only reason why they're unnecessary is because we're going to mirror it across. So, but now you can see there's some extra faces inside. And so these also I can delete. So I can select these faces here and delete them. Now where I don't want to delete them is I want to keep this edge here, because this edge will kind of block and create an edge with this. So there's you have to kind of think about where you're subtracting things, getting rid of these extra faces. So on the inside here, I'm just selecting these interior faces that nobody's ever going to see. And it looks like there's one more along here, and then here, and then here. And so I just have to go through and select those. And you could get kind of crazy and really delete all those. I'm just going to kind of end it about there for right now. But to save on geometry, you can really go through and clean up and sort of delete extra interior edges, faces that you don't need. Like all this can be cleaned up quite a bit. The only thing is, like if I delete this face, what will happen is, let's see. Yeah, actually I can delete this face too. So actually all these faces on this side, I could delete. So here's a trick that you could do. Let me undo that last one. Is you can select, if you know the face where it's at, like I'll select this face, and I think it rolls around. It's kind of tricky here, but it's right inside here. I can't grab it. But let me do it with the big one. So you click on this face, hold the shift key, double click. So that whole edge loop is selected, right? So what I can do is delete that, and then make sure it's separated. So click here, and then do the same thing over here. Double click, and then delete. And now in this side, I can select this face, and then I can hold shift, and it's the right arrow, the greater than symbol, which is below the L key on the keyboard. You can basically just select that to grow your selection. And it looks like I have to delete on the side here. So there's a couple more faces where they're connected. But once you have the piece separated, it's just real easy to get rid of the rest without having to worry about it. So there's a couple more there, and then a couple more there. So now I can select this guy, hold shift, and then the greater than symbol, and it'll eventually stop the selection. See, it's not growing anymore, so it's all those interior faces, and then just delete. And so basically I just have to do that with these guys here, and I'll do that outside of the tutorial, because pretty much we're done at this point. The only thing we need to do now is maybe add a supporting edge loop on the inside. I'll kind of isolate this and show you where I would do that. Is probably like right here, but I would kind of clean up this geometry. There's a little overlap that happens here, and sometimes this happens. And so what you can do is you can select some extra verts, and you can merge these verts together. So there's a nice tool for that. It's called the weld tool. It's this guy right here in my shelf, and let me see where it's at. Target weld tool, it's called. There it is under mesh tools. So this guy, if you click on a vert and click on another one, it will kind of like merge those two together. And so as I drag across, these now are merged together. And so any verts that you don't want, like this guy here, I can drag it down and it kind of welds to that one. And so yeah, it's just kind of handy little tool to kind of play around with. But now that corner's kind of fixed. There was an extra vert there that didn't need to be there. Now I can grab my insert edge loop tool and basically click along here, and there's a corner here which has a triangle, and so that's why it's doing that. So I'd have to use my the multi-cut tool to finish that. But essentially now we could click here, and then click here and then right click. Now we got a nice edge loop that goes all around there. And so what that'll do is I'll hold that edge a little bit better as when I hit number 3. Now these faces in here I can obviously delete, and I'm not gonna spend the tutorial doing that just because it's very repetitive. But yeah, basically all the modeling's done. I just have to clean up the mesh a tiny bit more, and yeah, that pretty much does it for this section and this piece, which now sort of matches this for the most part. In the next tutorial, maybe we'll pick on this piece at the bottom, or this, or this. I haven't figured out which of those sections to do next, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. Until next time, see you soon. Cheers.